So here we have a photo of the calculator before we begin the disassembly and cleaning, etc. And you can see that it's very mottled. The keys are filthy. The case is filthy. It's just pretty much a mess. And here we can get a look at it after the cleaning, the work I've done cleaning the keycaps. That bezel was repainted. Everything just kind of gone through. Note that the missing Nixie digits actually it's a multiplex display and the camera didn't catch it. It actually lights. So anyhow, let's take a jump in and look at the final steps to put everything back together. So looking at the reassembly order of the unit, one thing I've noticed is these screw holes here are countersunk. And once the cover panel's put in place, you can't get to those screw heads, and this would be glued down. So it makes me think that I really need to remove the posts from the keyboard PCB, mount those solid. This framework goes into the case, and then you screw the keyboard in as the last piece. The keyboard itself won't work down through the hole in the plastic housing. It's a little too long. So I'm going to go ahead and hopefully back out the screws here on the back. And remove the rails. And it's the only logical order, I think, for putting it back together. Luckily these aren't, they didn't use Loctite or something to lock these together, so it comes apart relatively easily, which is a good thing. I contacted the Tektronix Museum down in Oregon to see if they have schematics, and they were able to send me some images that came from microfiche, which seem to cover everything except the power supply. And of course the power supply is what I'm after. They commented they had something like 3 million microfiche slides down there. And Friday they'd be able to take a look and see if they could figure out what they had. The work of actually getting those transferred to an electronic document costs $25 an hour, which is donated back to the museum. So that's really pretty cool. So once they can tell me what they have, I will engage with them and hopefully get some manuals printed, or a service manual, etc. printed. If you look for vintage tech, I believe you'll find the museum. I've been down there once. It's actually, if you're into old oscilloscopes and that kind of stuff, it's actually a really cool visit. They got back to me within minutes. I was actually surprised how quick they got back to me. Say within minutes of my email, and I actually got 2 replies. And the second one, the guy said, you beat me to it. Really pleasant experience, as Jay said when she was down there. Just, really nice people. She was able to go look at the for sale shelf, the eBay shelf. It sounded like they were a little suspicious. She was like an eBay hunter, just looking for stuff to post on eBay. And they do prefer their stuff, I think, to go to collectors if at all possible. I described to them all the work we've done here on the unit over the last couple of days, and they were like, wow, you've made a lot of progress. And well, I'm on vacation this week, and this is what I do on vacation. There's plans for my daughter to come up and visit. Those fell through, and I was going to try to get down to Utah and visit with her, and that didn't happen. So instead I'm here working on projects, which is fine. That's what I do. So let's keep putting this together. Yeah, and this is a case where stepping back and thinking about the reassembly order made sense. Not that I couldn't have put this together with the PC board on and then said, crud, I got to remove the board, and I've removed it. But always when you're working something like this, especially when there's countersunk holes and hidden screws, you need to really think about how does this get reassembled. Let's put a bit of torque on those. Wishful thinking. Want these vibrating loose. That gets the frame back together. The cleanup of the bezel ended up a little darker than I'd hoped, but I think the color is actually going to work well. That just looks fantastic. It's definitely darker than it originally was. It's almost a Heathkit color. But look at how that looks. Isn't that just gorgeous? Yeah, that's really pretty. See, I've got a little bit of gunk caught up in here that showed through. I looked at removing this dead epoxy or whatever it was, and it was enough work that I decided against it. Set that back down in there again and see how the edges look. That looks better. The stuff that was standing up through is missing there. I've got lots of room on the edges. So how I'm going to approach this is a bit of a cheat. Well, not really a cheat. It's too strong a term, but it is something I'll be able to work loose at a future date should I need to. And I'm just going to, at least for now, use some 3M double-sided tape. You know, it looks like a roll of Scotch tape, but it's actually double-sided. Can I get that to spin in there? There it goes. I think this will work well for our needs here. Let's get all of the leader off. Make sure I've actually got to where it's. There it is. I think for my needs here, this is going to work okay. No matter how much of that left over, whatever the previous glue was, I hit. I still end up with more left. I'm kind of giving up trying to clean that off. I want a piece along this edge. A piece along this edge. some in here. That's going to be too long. This tape, if you work at it, will release, making this potentially easier to release if it should come to that in the future. What is the width of this? I think it's a little bit wider than the frame. See, I got a little bit poking through there. I'm not even going to try to trim it off. I don't want to scar the paint on the other side. And sit that down in and see if we can get decent adhesion. So as a short term, I think this is going to work okay. In the long term, I'm not as happy with it as I could be. It's not gripping as well as I would have liked. I think partly because we're on rough surfaces. See if I can peel that off of there where it kind of overlaps into the key opening. Doesn't grab as nice as I would have liked. At least I'll come back and do something a little more permanent once everything's together. But you know, for now, it's going to hold sufficiently well. Let me move the keyboard assembly out of the way. See if I can get the case up here, and then, oh shoot, I just spilled dead solder again. Set that aside. This has got these mounted studs. They go through the holes here on the case. Like so. It's then got this metal backing frame. Which goes on in that orientation. Got a couple of nuts on there. Of course, the box with the hardware in it got closed. A couple of these on just to hold everything in place. here. Socket set. These shouldn't need to be highly torqued. Sure I've hit them all here. This one is loose. I don't want a nut rattling loose and dropping down into live electronics, especially with the kind of high voltage we have. That would just be flirting with disaster. Put the tools away. Keyboard to drop down in there. Can't wait to see some before and after photos. It definitely is much happier, much nicer looking, clean. A little bit of issue getting these to start, partly because the keyboard's just shifted a bit. Well, double-sided tape did not work. You just heard it drop off. It's a shame. Such is life. I had hopes as a temporary fix that would work. But alas, no love. Such is life. Well, I had hopes that would be enough to keep it tacked down, but it wasn't. Let's go ahead and drop it back down into place anyhow. Yeah. When I permanently mount that, it's going to have to be clamped, it looks like. It doesn't sit as flush as I'd like. What do you think? I think that looks fantastic. Now, rather than have it fall off again, I will set it aside. Set this aside for the time being. Bring back the guts. And we'll put the case on. Get an idea what it looks like in use. And that socket was put on there just to protect those little gold pins. Don't want them getting bent or broke off. Picked up some dog hair, it looks like. Not the tightest fit in the world. Set it down in place. Just lay the bezel in so we can see what it will look like. Plug in power. It upside down, which I did have. In the moment of truth, does it still power up and operate? I realize you can't see it. So again, that we've got the high voltage issue, and I do believe that's with a cap that needs to reform or be replaced. So we'll close up here with looking at some photos of the finished work. So there it is, the original. There it is after being cleaned up. Tubes are lit, looking really good. Another shot of the completed cleaning work. You can take a couple close-ups here of the keyboard. You can see how much cleaner and whiter the keys are. They look really good. Very happy with how this turned out, considering the age and the condition it came to me in. Really pleased with the restoration I've done so far. You can see the Tektronix Scientist logo there. And we'll take a look at some of the Nixies. They're behind a red bezel, that's why they appear red. With the bezel off, of course, they're a nice orange glow. The ×10 for the exponent is actually custom, and it turns out it's neon bulbs inside, it looks like, based on the schematic. There it is with pi entered. Get a nice view of the keyboard. This was actually 2 raised to the 16th. It's not quite perfect, which was interesting. The lights behind the degrees and radians control, the lights behind the defined function control. And we'll close here with just another view of it. So hopefully you've enjoyed this.